I remember in college, I had a weekend where I was constantly on the go. I went down to my parents' house, came back up to school, was getting ready for classes the next day, just kept busy, busy, busy. And as the weekend wore on, I kept wondering if there was something I forgot to do. And I was driving along and looked off to the side and there was Hy-Vee. And I said, oh yeah, it's been 3 days since I've eaten anything. It makes you wonder, how can you forget to eat? How can you just get so enraptured in your life and what's going on, enraptured in study of the scriptures, enraptured in whatever, that you just forget to eat? We know that people forget to sleep all the time. That's just what college is about. That's what some work is about. That's what doing taxes apparently is about sometimes. But to forget to eat for 3 days, for me it was just, I forgot. I just forgot. I just had so much going on that I didn't make time to eat at all, to prepare any food, to stop anywhere. I was just busy. I looked at Hy-Vee and said, well, you know, it's been 3 days, I should probably eat. Now, I was none the worse for wear, of course, but I probably did need to eat at that time. And we have a story where a group of 4,000 men, plus women and children, hadn't eaten. They were all, as a group, with Jesus, taking that opportunity to be with him. If you look in the section, if you look at chapter 7, it gives you an idea of where Jesus was. Because remember, Mark is written more geographically. And so it talks about where he is. It's not necessarily chronological, but it's geographical. He worked amongst a certain people. And at this time, he had gone across the lake from Galilee, and he had just come from Syria, Phoenicia. This was the area that wasn't of the Jews, but it was of the Gentiles. And so you had all these people who may have only heard a whisper about what Jesus was doing among the Jews. But they get to see him firsthand. And they know he's a Jew. And they know that Jews don't totally associate with other people. And so they wanted to take as much opportunity as they could to sit and listen to what Jesus had to say. So for 3 days, they sat and they listened. They learned. These Gentiles, and it's set up here. Jesus is talking to the Syrophoenician woman. The woman was a Greek, born in Syria and Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Yes, Lord, she replied, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. Jesus really was testing the woman at this point, trying to get under her skin about how the Jews and Gentiles associated. If you weren't a Jew, you had no rights to access to God, many people thought, to the God of the Jews. In many ways, they still abided by a regional God. What Jesus was doing here was he is establishing that he was not just God for a particular place, a particular people, a particular time, but he's God of the whole universe. And the great news is that he doesn't change. That we're not going to get to a day and then he's going to say no more. He's not going to get to a day and say, sorry, but you ran out of time. I don't take people from past Christianity. I don't take people from Iowa anymore. It's just no more. No, he says, I'm available to the whole world. For those who have faith and come to me. He didn't go to the Syrian Phoenician woman. He didn't go to her. She went to him. She had a need. She had a desire. And she went to Jesus with faith, knowing that he could help her. She didn't know that he was the King of the universe. She didn't know that he was the hope of the world. She just knew that he helped others. Can you help me? So he has a group of 4,000 plus women and children. Let's say 12,000 people. 12,000 people who were following him out in a desert place. Before, remember, when you looked at the story of the 5,000, they were in a nice green pasture. Everything looked really good. They were right by the water. But this says distinctly that they were out of this. They weren't near any nice green pastures. They weren't in a park for them to sit at picnic tables. He didn't have them sit in groups of 10s and 20s, maybe because there wasn't space for 10s and 20s or 50s. But he provided for them. He provided them for them because it had been 3 days and they forgot to eat. It was 3 days they didn't go home. It was 3 days and they wanted to hear from Jesus. They were so hungry for what he had to say that they didn't think about the hunger that was in their stomach. Oh, for that type of hunger for God's word. Oh, for that hunger for God, for him. There are times that we do take retreats where we do take that time. And sometimes we very on purpose do not eat. That's called fasting. Now, when you just forget to eat, that's not fasting. That's just forgetting to eat. But when you fast, it's when you dedicate a time to prayer and to study. Now, you might call this 12,000 people an accidental fast, because they didn't intend to do this. But they were all together. They were all listening to Jesus. They were all learning. And Jesus knew that they couldn't make it home, that they needed some sustenance. I knew that I needed to eat. I may not have felt like I needed to eat. I was fine. But I knew I needed to eat. I knew I needed to go next door and pick up a nice big 12-inch sub sandwich from Hy-Vee. It was so good. But for them, Jesus says to the disciples once again, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. Now, remember, the disciples, just a little bit ago, in Galilee, had seen Jesus feed 5,000 people. They knew it was possible. They knew that he could take care of it. They knew. But listen to the response. The disciples answered, but where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread for them to eat? Where can we get enough bread to feed them? They just got done. They had already experienced feeding more people, 5,000 plus women and children. Maybe 16,000, 17,000 people versus 12,000, 13,000 people. With 5 loaves, he was able to do it. And so the disciples, you would think they would know. You would think that they could understand. Maybe they thought it was simply, he could only do it when he's on the other side of the lake.